just a little bit about why we're doing this, why the Chamber's involved in this conversation, and what we're hoping that you all can hopefully get out of this community summit this morning. So these are familiar photos for a lot of folks in this room. These conversations started for our Chamber several years ago. We've been involved in trying to understand where and how the business community can play an impactful role in the conversation around our homeless crisis. And the conversation really sped up quite a bit at the beginning of the pandemic. So throughout 2020, for those of you who are unaware, there were some federal guidelines that basically mandated that folks shelter in place. And one of the things that were impacted by those mandates is our shelter systems had to significantly reduce their capacity in some situations, which frankly increased the amount of unhoused individuals who were living on our streets, unsheltered. So what we heard and what we experienced from the Chamber is a whole lot of phone calls. Businesses picking up the phone and calling the Chamber saying, where's the Chamber at on this issue? We're really struggling, trying to figure out how do we help support our businesses, our employees, and frankly, the unhoused individuals who we're experiencing every day to find a better path. There was a lot of compassion, there was a lot of frustration, there was a lot of confusion about what folks could do, but I kept getting the question, what's the Chamber doing? And to be honest, I didn't have an answer for them. So speed up through 2020, we launched into 2021, and I had a conversation with our board of directors, and I said, look, we're a membership organization. The number one issue that I'm getting conversations and phone calls about from our members is around homelessness, and they're asking what we're doing, and we don't have a good answer for them. And our board had a long conversation, several conversations, about the right place for the business community to plug in. And I tell this story a lot. I kind of laid out two options. I said, we could get really loud and angry, and we could march down to City Hall, and we could pound our fists on the table and point our fingers and say, you all need to fix this. Or we can get really deep and strategic and try to understand where's the best place for the private sector to make an impact in this conversation. And our board, one of our values is bold leadership, and they said, we want to go the second route. Frankly, that was a lot harder option. And we're finding out now, several years in, that that is not the easy path, but we believe it's the right one. If we were to look back 10 years from now and honestly evaluate whether we made a difference, just getting loud and angry without really having any solutions to put on the table wasn't the path forward for our organization, or I think for our community. So our board said, let's get deep and strategic. We need to understand this issue at a level that we can actually contribute positive solutions that haven't already been thrown around for several years, right? So what do? We launched into a pretty extensive education effort. We sat down with over 200 individuals in our community, having one-on-one conversations with almost every nonprofit executive director who works in and around this space, with city and county staff, with business leaders, with unhoused individuals themselves, healthcare professionals, public safety professionals, just to ask them, what's working? What role do you play? You've been in and around this conversation a lot longer than we have. What magic wand would you wave to try to change things in our community? And what we ended up with was a whole lot of research and a whole lot of information and a lot of really good best practices that are already living in our community. What we boiled it down to and the problems that we're trying to solve here, there's a growing number of individuals living on the streets in our community, and we believe it's unacceptable. There is growing crime across the community that's impacting housed and unhoused individuals alike. We're not just talking about creating safe spaces for businesses or for neighbors. Our unhoused individuals are often victims of crimes just as much as the rest of us are, and I believe, they deserve to be protected and feel safe in our community as well. But the thing that was the most surprising to me, and honestly I think the most concerning, was this feeling of hopelessness that I heard from a lot of people when we were having these conversations. That this challenge had grown to a place where we couldn't overcome it. We didn't know what we were going to do. There wasn't a clear path forward, and people were starting to feel like this was just the fate of our community. And anyone who's read anything about change management knows that one of the first things that you need in order for change to happen is for a bunch of people to believe that change can happen. And so if people don't believe we can actually do it, we're never going to get there. Sammy, go next slide. Right now, our community has about 4,146 folks who are living unhoused as of August of 2023. Thanks to some really great work from our county and our community leaders, we have what's called a homeless by name list, where we're able to really track the folks that are accessing services in our community on a month-by-month basis and have a pretty good handle on the folks who do access services, where they're accessing them, and what their situation is in our community. I'll click through. There's some documents on your table that you guys can look at that have a lot of information. Hopefully you can pull back to later. But we're also able to see some trend lines. And the trend is that this number is growing. We are on par right now for exceeding the annual number of individuals in our community who've accessed services and experienced homelessness. We're on par for exceeding that for this year. Go ahead, Sam. So what do we want to do about it? The Chamber's vision for our community is one where businesses can succeed and individuals can live happy, healthy lives. This is a vision that we share with so many people across this community. But what we really needed was a shared vision around homelessness. And when we started sitting down and talking to people, what we found out is that there is a shared vision, a community where homelessness is rare, brief, and non-recurring. We're not talking about solving homelessness for good, because we know that that's impossible. We're always going to have individuals who are finding themselves in these situations. But we want to create a system where if someone does find themselves unhoused, it's for a short amount of time, they can access services quickly, and they don't find themselves back in that situation again. So what's the Chamber's role in this conversation? We really tried to figure out the place that we could plug in where there were gaps. We weren't overlapping. The first is around research. I'll talk a little bit about that. Convening. The Chamber is a convener. We do this every single day in all kinds of different conversations. This is a role we felt comfortable playing. Educating the public. We know there is so much information out there. Our social service providers and our government partners are doing really good work every day, but that word is not getting out to the general community. Innovation. We really believe bringing the public sector and the private sector and the social service sector together is where really good innovative ideas come from, but everybody at that table has to know enough to be able to contribute effectively. And then the last is advocacy. The Chamber's an advocacy organization. We are willing and able and ready to advocate on behalf of our partners in this community. We just have to know, what are we all trying to fight for here together? So starting with research, the Chamber did this State of the Homeless report based on all of those interviews that we had. We had hundreds of pages of notes, and at the urging of a business leader in our community, they said, put it together, send it out, tell the community and your membership what you learned. All we did was sort of organize some of the best practices and the things that we felt like this community needed to see, and that report was released in late 2021, sort of outlining the areas where we felt like we could see improvement in the community. The next, on the research piece, what we heard from a lot of folks when we talked to them is, we don't understand how much this issue is costing our community. Where's the money coming from? Where is it going? Where are there gaps that we should be spending more? Where could we maybe be spending less if there's more effective ways to spend that? We really felt like in order to do this work well, we needed to hire professionals. You'll hear from them a little bit later today about that cost analysis piece. But we also wanted our partners at the table doing it with us. The City of Eugene and Springfield, Lane County, Homes for Good, all came to the table and said, we want to help bring some transparency to this part of the conversation. And they all contributed over this last year for us to come up with some numbers so we can better understand cumulatively how much are we spending on homeless services in this community in order for us to make decisions about how to keep doing this work better going forward. Convening, we launched a Business Leaders Task Force. This task force, I expected 12 businesses to write me after that report was done saying, we want to step up. I had over 100 businesses reach out within the first month saying, we want to be a part of this conversation. We've been convening those businesses for the last year and a half, really diving in deep on some of these topics. And that table is opened up to community partners, to neighbors, to government and social service providers as well, really trying to create a place where we can all learn together. And then we really wanted to get intentional about bringing cross-sector leaders together to say, okay, how could we do this differently? So we've begun to set the table for this cross-sector partnership with folks representing all different parts of our community, coming together with expertise, saying, this is a community-wide challenge. This is not something we can continue to put the burden on our government or social service partners alone. It is big enough that we all have to get involved. And what does that look like? So we're in the beginning stages of drafting this roadmap, a shared vision for what that looks like. We've sort of boiled it down to these 5 areas, which really are addressed in so many plans across our community. We are not trying to start from scratch and create a new plan. But we do believe that organizing this and getting it out to the community in a way where they can understand it is the way that we start to bring hope back to our community. Today, you're going to hear a little bit about each of these different areas, our housing shortages, our shelter shortages, what we're doing in the service space, how are we providing services for unhoused individuals who need them, workforce development, we have a great project we're going to share with you guys today, and then public safety. We think it's a critical piece of this conversation. There's some really innovative stuff already happening. We know that the wins in this area are hard to pull out distinctively, but we found some really great places where business leaders have been able to plug into the conversation and really make a difference. We'll talk about our workforce initiative later. There's great examples, when a business leader called me up a couple of years ago and said, hey, I'm trying to understand, should I get involved in this conversation? Is this something that makes sense for our company and our family's company to actually plug into? Where should I go? Who should we talk to? And we had just made a connection with a local leader in the community who had this vision for creating a new shelter space. And we were able to say, yep, pick up the phone and call Gabe. He's got a great idea and he needs a strong partner to partner with him. That's the kind of leadership from the business community that we expect to continue to happen as they stay involved in this conversation. So educating and advocating, why are we here today? We really want to get the word out about the things that are happening so far so we can continue to escalate it. We need better understanding from everyone means more room for innovation. We think more voices means more action and more impact. And lastly, we do believe there is hope for a better future. We are finding it in all the places that we've been working over this last year, and we really want to share that hope with all of you. So today, your role, I hope, is to listen, to take it in, to find a place for you to plug in, and then hopefully to share some of the hope that you find walking away from the conversation today. Thanks.